The following languages I'm about to list are spoken by me, but in varying levels of proficiency. Spanish, Hebrew, Arabic, Korean, American Sign Language. A couple of them I started to learn in the country of spoken language, and after a while I lost vocabulary due to moving away, right? And others, it's a continuous journey. Now I'm going to tell you my story of learning Spanish in Spanish. Bueno, ahora vivo en Miami, pero antes, durante mi tiempo en la escuela secundaria, vivía en Atlanta, Georgia. Como muchos lugares en todo el mundo, ofrecían clases de español y francés y todo eso, pero generalmente a los estudiantes no les importa. Pero para mí, a mí me importa, ¿sí? Porque dormía en todas mis clases, especialmente matemática, excepto que español. En este contexto, en Atlanta, Georgia, habían muchos mexicanos y me encantaba la cultura y la comida y la gente, todo. Y yo quería aprender español para comunicar mejor con mis amigos y con mis vecinos, pero en mi clase era un poco mezclada, ¿ok? Con estudiantes de una familia mexicana o una familia latino, y ellos hablan español, pero necesitan ayuda con gramática, por ejemplo. Y por el resto de la clase era como necesitaba ayuda con todo, ¿no? Entonces al final, como en muchos casos, aprendían vocabulario, hacían proyectos, presentaciones, miraban películas, pero no tenían una experiencia con personas nativas del idioma. Fast forward, en el futuro asistí a la Universidad de Miami. En la universidad ofrecían todos los idiomas en el mundo, ¿sí? Japonés y alemán y hebreo y español, y empezaba a aprender hebreo durante la escuela secundaria también, en una sinagoga en mi barrio. Entonces tomaba clases de hebreo y español y tenía una beca para todo en my college experience. So usaba la beca para pagar para un viaje o un estudio extranjero en Buenos Aires, Argentina. Quería ir a México, pero no ofrecían un programa que era asociada con mi beca, entonces elegí Buenos Aires en vez de México. Y en Buenos Aires tenía una pasantía. Empezaba con un programa intensivo de español para un mes, y después hice un semestre de estudios con clases generales de historia y cultura y no me acuerdo. Pero era divertida y era muy útil. And that is how I acquired Spanish right now. As you can see, maybe I made some mistakes or maybe I forgot some vocabulary, but that's the reality of it. And day by day, the truth is that I'm no longer in Argentina. I'm now in Miami, where there is a mix of Cubans and Venezuelans and Colombians, and my Spanish has gotten mixed, and a lot of times we speak Spanglish as well. So sometimes when I don't remember a word, I resort to English. However, for the most part, I will feel very comfortable if I go to another Spanish-speaking country and I can pick it right back up. And for me, that's what fluency means, right? Fluency, I used to think, was that you master the language and you're perfect at it. But even in English, right, where I love literature, I love reading, I love the arts of literature, I don't know every single word in the English language, and that's my native language, right? How much more in a second language, a language that you were not born speaking, you didn't grow up speaking. So to expect yourself to be perfect is not realistic. Fluency, for me, is measured by how comfortable you are. And also, like, do you dream in the language sometimes? Do you think in the language first, depending on the context that you're in? Can you find ways to get around the words that you cannot say or the words that you don't know in that language? If you can find ways, you're pretty comfortable. I'd say after a certain level of conversational practice, you're able to call yourself fluent. The reality that a lot of us face is that we're not able to afford flying to a country as soon as you want to learn a new language, right? That was the reality for me. If I didn't have my scholarship, I couldn't do it. But there are many programs in which you can do it, right? Work exchange programs where you don't have to pay, but someone will pay for you to come and work for them or live in their house and talk to their children in your language. That's kind of more like an au pair. But for example, with the website Workaway, you can go and volunteer your services to live in that country and experience the language. The best way to learn a language is acquisition. There's no other best way. There's no way around it. Acquisition is the method that we use to learn our own native language, like a baby. A baby doesn't come out of the womb saying hello, but they experience their parents or their caregivers speaking to them with certain words, and over time they associate those words with certain meanings. It is the same thing with a new language learner. No matter how old you are, you have to approach it like a little child that is learning their native language for the first time. Textbooks can only take you so far and should only be used to support conversational practice. Everyone is different. Some people need to take notes during conversational practice. Some people don't. You do what works for you. And intensives, as in language intensives, are very helpful, but not always accessible or affordable. So I'm going to offer some different resources that you can use to learn languages the easy way or in a way that's more accessible. Resources. Free library classes. Yay! My local library here in Miami offers free Spanish classes for people in the area, for residents of the neighborhood. And the classes are a mix of conversational / grammar work or writing that you have to do. Not all of these classes will have the highest caliber of learning. I mean, they're free, right? It's a public service, but usually in your area they will offer classes for the language that is most spoken around you. And you just need to sign up. You sign up and you'll have probably a few months of classes where you have one class each week, and it'll help keep you motivated when you have a small community of people going for the same goal. Other free websites include Tandem. And by the way, I am not being sponsored by any of these websites. These are websites that I have used and sometimes still do use right now to exchange language, partners in conversation, and all of those things. So Tandem is a site in which you can go, you pick a language that you want to learn or that you want to practice, and you exchange with someone. You can do it on the site. You can have video chats or just phone calls or just do text message or voice message, however you'd like. If you're a little shy and you want to start with voice messages, that's one way you could do it. I actually have one friend that I made from Tandem when I first signed up, and she is a Spanish speaker, and until this day we still do language exchange, and it's probably been at least like 2 years since I met her on there. She has my personal number. We've become real friends, and I just love her, and she helps me to keep my Spanish brushed up, and I do the same for her English. Then we have Hello Talk, which is a phone app, or at least I use it on my phone. With that, if I'm honest, for me, in my experience, there were a lot of people who just wanted to have my number or ask me if I was married. But there are ways that you can get around that. For example, you can set it to only girls contacting me, or only people that can speak this language, or only people that live in maybe this city can contact me. And I think you can purchase membership to have other perks as well, but it is free to use it for the bare basics and the bare minimum, and I think it's helpful. Duolingo is nice. It's a nice resource if you want to support some learning that you're already doing in real life. I will say there is some things on there. For example, I know that in Spanish they offer transcribed articles that are related to real life, real world issues that I used to use all the time, and it was really helpful. And then there's things like meetup.com, and on meetup.com either you can make your own meetup or you can look for someone in your area that does language exchange. You might have a neighbor that speaks Spanish or Arabic or whatnot, and it's up to you to really reach out and be social and say, hey, would you mind me exchanging English with you, or would you mind teaching me some Arabic? Can I help like cut your lawn or something, in exchange for some experience, some conversational practice, or however that may look. But meetup.com is one way to find people that are local and want to do the same things that you want to do. Facebook groups are one thing as well. I'll leave that up to you, how much you trust it. Another option is YouTube vlogs. I use Piece of Hebrew, which is a channel here on YouTube that is super helpful in keeping my Hebrew brushed up as much as I can, not living in the country anymore, or not living around Hebrew speakers anymore. There are other channels like this, and they're not always necessarily language learning channels. For example, when I was learning Korean or Spanish, and I used to watch like K-dramas all the time, I would watch, I think the name of the channel was Jex Coreana, and she was a Korean person who grew up in Mexico, so she would speak Spanish in most of her videos and sometimes Korean, and it was great because I was able to listen and like learn both ways. So she would have subtitles like in Spanish sometimes while she was speaking Korean, and I couldn't speak in English because there was no room for it. And that's an amazing way to be able to practice your language, right? You can pick channels of like someone who's just a Spanish speaker, but they show you like their daily life. And so you're able to get vocabulary for different aspects of life that you might need in the future. Lastly, I'm going to talk about Italki. Italki is a language learning platform in which you can pick your own teacher at your own price for your own amount of time, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, I think are all the intervals. And it's very convenient. Pretty much all languages are there, even dialects. I think Jamaican patois is on there, and I'm Jamaican, so that was a real surprise. But you go on there and it's pretty easy to use, pretty easy to set up. I found a teacher that I really liked for both Hebrew and Spanish. I tend to stick with them. It does not have to be formal learning. If you'd like that, you can find a teacher who wants to teach formally with textbooks and worksheets and all the things, those things. Or you can find someone who just talks to you and corrects your mistakes that you make in the language. So it's extremely convenient. Once again, I'm not being sponsored by them. As a matter of fact, I was a teacher on Italki for 2+ years, right after returning to the States. You can look up my profile, but I have 5-star reviews because I loved doing what I was doing. I just liked being able to talk to people and learn about other cultures, meanwhile doing what I like, correcting people's grammar. If you are someone who is interested in learning on Italki or teaching on Italki, I can make a separate video in regards to that. But the last thing to take away from this is that learning a language should not feel like a chore. It should not feel like a duty. If you are learning it just because someone else is learning it, you probably shouldn't. If it's going to be useful to you and it's a language that is used around you in everyday life, I would say go ahead, because you have many opportunities for free to practice that language as long as you put yourself out there. This is my real story. These are the things that worked for me, and these are resources I'm putting out there that work for you. This channel is geared towards creatives and artists that want to learn how to practically hone their craft. If you're interested in things like this, please take a look in the description, or you can subscribe, or you can like, or you can hit the notification bell. Do what you would like. Thank you for watching.